Welcome to the NYSPHSAA Coaches Module Number 1. I'm Val Snellgrove, the President of the New York State Cheer Judges Association, and I'll be taking you through this module. We'll be talking about stunts, tosses, and pyramids, the indicator reference sheet, the majority grid, the cheer, the overall performance, and I'll also be talking about skill sheets. In this module, we will be taking a look at the new information for this year. The basket toss information, the rubrics, the use of front bases, the scoring difficulty for stunts, tosses, and pyramids, the use of averaging of scores to obtain the difficulty score, the scoring of the cheer portion of the routine and the overall portion of the routine. We'll take a look at the 2017-2018 building score sheet, majority grid, and the indicator checkmark reference sheet, which is new for this year, as well as the skill sheet. New this year, stunts, tosses, and pyramids will be viewed cumulatively throughout the entire routine to identify the correct score. This differs from past years in that the building judge focused on the sequence that had the greatest score value and viewed the rest of the stunts throughout the routine for execution only. Also new this year, teams must perform 3 different skills for both stunts and pyramids throughout the routine. Remember that as long as it is clear to the judge that there is a pyramid sequence occurring, proximity is what will determine that the stunts and dismounts being performed are part of the pyramid sequence and not a standalone stunt. This may include the stunt behind or in front of the pyramid structure. Some coaches utilize a creative end to stunts as the opening of their pyramid. These may appear to be dismounts, but are also being utilized as transitions to the rest of the pyramid. This will be counted as part of the pyramid and score, and not part of the stunt score. There are 3 ranges this year: basic, intermediate, and advanced. Range does not matter other than letting you know where the skills that you have chosen fall. You may choose to select skills from any range. You can use the progression rubric like a menu, choosing the skills that best suit your routine and team. Sprinkles are added to the starting point value prior to averaging the 3 skill scores that will serve as the difficulty score. The judges do this before averaging to give the correct score for a particular skill and not as an overall sprinkle score. We want to give credit to each individual skill you perform. Teams may not use all tosses or all dismounts to achieve their score. Skills need to be from the various categories of variations, transitions, inversions, tosses, and dismounts. When your team chooses to do basket tosses as one of your sequences, the tosses must be performed during the same time frame, not randomly placed throughout the routine. The tosses may be rippled or contagious, but must be all the exact same skill in majority. For example, all kick full tosses. If you do not perform the same skill, it cannot be counted as one of your 3 skills. Tosses that are not being counted for majority can be scored for the purpose of execution. This would include the random single toss that you may include to enhance your choreography. Note that the rubrics are now based upon progressions similar to the NYSPHSAA progression sheets. The rubrics will not show the base score for each bulleted item. However, you now have access to a progression sheet for reference, and that will have the beginning skill value based upon majority. The NYSPHSAA progression sheets will have the point values for each skill that will show the beginning value for majority, more than majority, and full team. Note that the scores are lower on the stunt rubric and parts of the pyramid rubric this year. This is so when sprinkles are added for more than majority up to full team, and when teams do stunts without front bases, that there is room to slide your scores up. There has been a good deal of discussion about the number of bases and assessing the correct score. Teams with less bases will garner additional decimal points based on some stunts without front bases. This could be just one stunt without a front base, and your team would get an additional 0.2 on that skill. If most of the stunt groups that are going up are without a front base, then you're going to get an additional 0.4. And if all of the stunt groups that are going up do not have a front base, you'll get an additional 6. More risk means more reward. Teams meeting majority but using front bases would enter at the beginning point value assigned to that stunt with no additional sprinkle points. Remember that majority is the number of team members divided by 4. That's the number of members in a stunt group. If a team is getting to majority by using a front base, they are going to still hit majority, but that skill is not as difficult as doing that stunt without a front base. So in essence, they are using 5 members instead of 4 members to put up that stunt. Therefore, the team will receive additional decimal points if they are not using front bases. What happens if your team performs skills from different ranges? The judge will focus only on the score assigned to the skill and not worry if the team is performing skills from different ranges. They then will give additional sprinkle points for doing stunts without front bases, formerly known as front spots, before averaging their scores to find the final difficulty score. Coaches will use the progression rubric as a menu, picking the skills that you want to utilize in your routine, with no penalty from choosing skills from different ranges. When we are doing difficulty scoring from the judge's side, we look at the stunts, tosses, and pyramids progression sheets, where the skills fall to find the value of each of the skills performed. The judges will choose the appropriate beginning value for the skill based upon whether the team is in majority, more than majority, or full team using the majority grid. A team who just reaches majority will be awarded the first score listed. If the team uses more than majority but less than full team, they begin at the middle score listed on our progression sheet. And if the team has the entire team stunting, the opening score is the last score that we have listed on our skill sheet. So it incrementally rises with going above majority. Once the judge has the beginning or entry skill, they will then add a 0.2 if some of the stunts do not have a front spot. For example, one of the stunts. Most of them, perhaps 3 of 4 stunts or 2 of 3 stunts, will garner an additional 0.4. And if all of the stunts that are being put up do not have front bases, regardless of where they fall, majority, more than majority, or full team, that team is going to get an additional 0.6 for that skill. They will then add the 3 scores from the highest skills performed together and divide by 3, and that will give you your total difficulty score. As you look through the progressions for pyramids, you can see that they are very similar to stunts. A new structure, though, occurs after any transition. Transitions must end at the extended level, not at a prep, for the structure to be counted. We had a lot of coaches that did not understand this last year. A transition occurs whenever the flyer's feet leave the hands of the bases. So switch-ups, tick-tocks, bump-downs, and press-ups are just some of the examples of transitions. Non-release transition is when a top person is moved from one stunt to another while maintaining physical contact with the original base or bases, new base or bases, or a post. And release transition or release pyramid transition is when a top person changes from one stunt to another, including loading positions during a temporary loss of physical contact with his or her bases. These are both definitions from the National Federation of High School Spirit Rules book. If a dismount skill is being used within the pyramid, it will be counted as a transition. Note that body positions are no longer part of the pyramid rubric. You can certainly use them within your structures, but you will focus on the structure changes, the transitions, the releases, and the dismounts. Be sure to look at the pyramid portion of the majority grid. This will differ from the stunt majority grid, as it is not possible with braced skills to utilize the same majority grid that we use for stunts. You are looking at the number of members you have involved in the pyramid versus the number of stunts. Dismounts must still be in majority to count as a skill, however. We're going to look at a couple of examples to help you to understand how we come up on the judges' side with your difficulty scores. So let's say a team performs 3 different skills in majority. So that means that they are simply reaching the number of stunt groups that will put them in majority. And they do this in the course of their routine. One of the stunts that they do is extended single leg with 2 body positions, which starts at a 4.1. Note that this is the first base or opening score listed for this skill, as the team is just doing this in majority. The team is doing switch up to single leg, which has an entry value of 6.8, and a suspended front flip non-twisting, which now has an entry value of 6.0. We will then record if the team is using front spots on all of their stunts, some of their stunts, or not using front spots at all. So if they are on some of their stunts without front bases, and that includes if they only have one of their stunts without front base, you're going to get an additional 0.2. If most of the stunts for that skill are without front bases, we're going to add an additional 4 to that beginning score value. And if all of the stunts are without front bases, we're going to add an additional 0.6 to that skill value. We will then average the 3 scores together to find the difficulty score. So if the beginning value score was a 4.1 and a 0.2 was added to that, those are sprinkle points added for some of the stunts with no front bases, that would give your team a 4.3 on difficulty for that skill. Looking at that second skill, 6.8, let's say the coach felt that they needed to use front bases on all of their stunt groups. Therefore, no additional sprinkle points would be added, and that would remain at the entry level score for that skill of a 6.8. And on the dismounts, front bases were used, and so it remained at a 6.0. We would then add 4.3 plus 6.8 plus 6.0, and that equals 17.1. We would then divide that score by 3, giving you on your score sheet a final score of 5.7. In this example, another team performs the same skills in their routine as the previous team, but they're doing it at more than majority, 75%. So that means that they may have added an additional stunt group or 2 above majority, not reaching full team. They're doing the extended single leg with 2 body positions, switch up to single leg, and suspended front flip non-twisting dismount. The stunt beginning value score will have increased from the previous team because they have used more than majority for the number of stunt groups, but have not used the full team. If the team used full team, the opening score values will be even higher than majority or more than majority. Teams maxing out the number of stunt groups that they can put up will receive a higher score. Judges will then see how many of the stunt groups are using front spots or front bases. Judges then add the sprinkle points to those entry scores, then divide by 3 to find your difficulty score. The difficulty score for this team would be a 6.3 versus the 5.7 the previous team received, who did the same stunts but with the use of front bases, or they did more. This particular team has more than majority. In this example, a team performs 3 different skills in the course of the routine in majority, meaning that they are starting at that entry level or lowest score listed on the stunt progression sheet. Note that these are lower score values than last year to allow for additional sprinkle points. 1.5 up, 540 to 1 leg extended begins at an 8.7. Kick full tosses begin at a 6.5. And suspended front flip full twist Baja Arabians begin at 7.5. The judges are going to average after the sprinkle points are added to each separate skill. For some of the stunts without front bases, an additional 0.2 will be added. If in that skill most of the stunts are without front bases, an additional 0.4 will be added. And if all of the stunts are without front bases for that skill, an additional 0.6 will be added. So on that first skill, the beginning or entry score value was 8.7, and none of those stunt groups had front bases. Therefore, they're going to get an additional 0.6, which makes their value difficulty score on that particular skill a 9.3. The 6.5 stays because all of the tosses had a front base. A 7.5 stays because all of the dismounts had a front base. We divide that total by 3 to get a final difficulty score of 7.8. In this example, a team is doing extended to Superman to prone starting at 4.1, low to high extended tick-tock starting at a 6.8, and suspended front flip full twist Baja Arabian dismount at 7.5. 0.6 will be added to the 4.1 because the sprinkle points added for full or all stunts with no front bases will give that additional bump to that score. In that 6.8, a 0.4 was added, most of the stunts without front bases, and they get a 7.2. Note that the team went over the top of the intermediate range. You're still going to give credit for that because it doesn't matter where you pick your skills. It's going to be your average of the 3 scores that's going to make a difference in your difficulty score. In that last dismount, some do not have a front, and so they got bumped up to a 7.7. Adding those 3 scores together and dividing by 3 gives a final difficulty score in stunts to this team as a 6.5. In this next example, we're going to move into pyramids. A team performs 3 different skills in their pyramid sequence or anywhere in their routine. 2 extended single leg structures at 4.1, ball up release to and from an extended position at 5.5, and double skill twisting dismount at 7.7, remembering that the twist counts as one of those skills. We're going to average after the sprinkle points as we did with stunts. So therefore, a 4.1 plus a 0.6 equals a 4.7 because sprinkle points were added for all of the stunts with no front bases. A 5.5 plus a 0.4 equals a 5.9. Most of the stunts were without front bases. The 7.7 dismount is going to stay. The final score for this difficulty in pyramids is a 6.1. In this example for pyramids, a team performs 4 different skills for pyramid difficulty. Multiple advanced transitional sequence passing through 2.5 high, which starts at a 7.3. That means that there must be more than one sequence, and passing through 2.5 high means that those skills must be higher than an extended stunt around it. Handstand at prep level on the shoulder to sponge to prep begins at an 8.3, front handspring to extended begins at a 9.5, and suspended front flip 360 full twist Baja Arabian starts at a 7.5. 7.3 plus 0.2 equals 7.5. Sprinkle points were added for some of the stunts without front bases. 8.3, there was a use of front bases. 9.5 plus 0.4 equals 9.9. Most without front bases. 7.5, there are front bases on that dismount. So as the judges, we choose the 3 highest skills to average. This would leave the dismount out of the average or possibly the multiple advanced transitional sequence, but we would still use those for execution score. The final score is an 8.5666. That then gives the team an 8.6 for their final difficulty score on pyramids. Now, I want to go back to that 9.5. What if all of those stunts did not have front bases? That's going to put them over a 10. That's fine because this is averaging. It's not putting you out of the range. It's simply going to be a number. In this case, it would be a 10.1 that would be averaged in if there were no front bases on that front handspring to extended. So just an FYI, that does happen when we are doing difficulty scores, that you may be above the basic range or intermediate range or the advanced range for that when we are getting the actual skill score, but when it's averaged in, it's going to come out in the wash. In pyramids, when it says multiple or all. Remember that when you choose a skill and it says on the rubric multiple, that it's referring to more than one. All, that is referring to all. For example, all flyers inside and outside. This is very confusing sometimes for coaches and judges alike. So be sure you understand the skill that you are choosing and what the entry-level score you will get for that skill. If you are not performing the skill as listed, you will not get credit for it, even if it is listed on your skill sheet. What if your team throws in a single base skill in a pyramid? It would be one of the 3 skills that you have chosen, and you will get credit for that skill, even if there is only one. This is different than last year. You will go to your pyramid progression sheet and look at the entry-level skill for that single base skill. If you are doing 1, it would be that score listed. If you are doing 2, the score will have a higher entry value. And if you have 3 or more, even higher. Judges will then add the additional sprinkles for not using the front bases. What if your team only does 1 or 2 skills? This could be a choreography error on your part, so make sure that you are checking your entire choreography from beginning to end, that you have 3 different skills for stunts and 3 different skills in your pyramid. Or this may happen when flyers fall during a sequence and the skill is out of majority. This will apply to both stunts, tosses, and pyramids. The judges will look at the skill or skills the team performs in majority. We will find the skill entry point value. We will not give additional sprinkle points for less bases. We will add the skill point values together and divide that total by 3. So here's an example. A team only completes 2 skills for a variety of reasons. A 9.1 and a 9.5 gives us an 18.6. We're going to divide that by 3. And your difficulty score will be a 6.2. You only did 2 skills of the 3 required skills. That is why we are still dividing by 3, and you're not getting a 0. So there's the silver lining. A 9.5 means that only 1 skill was witnessed by the judge, and so it's going to be divided by 3 because it's only one of the skills of the 3 that were required that are observed. And so the difficulty score is a 3.2 versus receiving a 0. The only time zeros are going to be given is if a team does not do any stunts or any pyramid. There has been a lot of discussion about number of members on a team. And therefore this year there will be a minimum requirement for all teams to have 2 stunt groups. This will be difficult for some teams that have less than 7 members, and so they may have to get creative during doing a single base stunt, for example. But we really want to encourage coaches to make sure that they are including the number of team members that reflect the number of people that try out for their teams or they invite to try out for teams. The cheer committee really is interested in increasing the number of members on the team versus the decrease that we have been seeing over the last couple of years. We think that coaches are really cognizant of the rubrics, and perhaps that has influenced the number of team members that they're putting on their team. We don't think it really means that the interest in cheerleading has waned, but we kind of feel like one has fed the other, in that the rubrics may be driving coaches into thinking about or rethinking about how many they take on a team to be able to max out their scores on the rubrics. So we are encouraging you as coaches prior to tryouts to really try to get as many people out for your tryouts as possible and increase the size on your teams. So for this year, there is not a limit of the least number of members that can be on a team, but as you can see, there is a minimum of 2 stunt groups. So that does signal to you that you should have at least 8 members on your team. If you aren't able to get 8 members, you're not going to get a 0. So let's take you through what's going to happen if there are less than 2 stunt groups. So there's going to be a minimum requirement for all teams to have 2 stunt groups. If a team does not have 2 stunt groups, the judge will evaluate the 3 required skills that that team does using the progression sheet as normal. We will find the corresponding entry stunt value. We will not add any sprinkle points. We're just going to use that entry stunt value listed first on our progression sheet. We're going to add up those 3 skill values as we would for any teams that are in majority, and then we're going to divide by 3. Next, we're going to divide that total by 2. This will give teams who are under 8 team members to still compete and receive a difficulty score, but will be preventing teams from doing one stunt group and attaining the same score as teams who put up 2, 3, 4, or more stunt groups doing the same skills. If a team does no stunts again, they would receive a 0. We actually saw this at state last year where a team came in with 5 team members and they scored quite well because they didn't have to do anything with synchronization, and they were able to do one skill and get the same score as somebody who was putting up 3, 4, or 5 stunt groups. So we had to relook at how we are scoring teams across the continuum, and really wanting to encourage more membership on teams in New York State. A reminder to coaches about the cheer. If the cheer does not meet the minimum requirement, the team will receive a 0 in the cheer category. New for this year, there is a minimum requirement of 30 seconds of a crowd effective cheer, that is versus 15 seconds from last year. The cheer must be consecutive and cannot include music or a backbeat. That means the cheer cannot be in different parts of the routine, but must happen in one time frame. If the team performs their cheer with music or a backbeat, they will receive a 0. The cheer can be at the beginning or the middle of the routine. The time between the cheer and the music portion, which is not scored, is called downtime, and that is a requirement. It is a maximum of 15 seconds and a minimum of 5 seconds. Remember, you cannot use a chant or motions or music during that downtime. So remember, as you are choreographing your routine, that there is a required downtime. It can be as little as 5 seconds, where you are placing safely your props down, moving your pom-poms out of the way, and that will not be scored. The indicators for the cheer are consistent levels of inflection. This is how your team raises or lowers their voice for effect. And consistent levels of enunciation. Are your words clear? Are they distinct? Your pace. Think Goldilocks. Is my team going too fast, too slow, or am I just right? This is cautionary if you only choreograph a 30-second cheer and your team's adrenaline is going during the routine at a competition. The chances are they're not going to hit that 30-second mark. We ran into this dozens of times last year where teams did not hit 15 seconds. When they practiced it, they were at 15 seconds, but coming into a competition, they were under 15 seconds. So making sure that you really choreograph more than 30 seconds for your cheer, that so should your team go a little bit faster, you're still going to be hitting that requirement. Is your cheer engaging and or leading the crowd? Some teams will use a callback style to engage the crowd or lead the crowd. Other teams are going to use excitement. They're going to lead the crowd through excitement, and the crowd becomes very, very enthusiastic about what they're doing on the team. Judges will not use a bias whether or not a team is using engagement or if they're leading the crowd. Use of skills. You may choose to use stunts, tumblings, or jumps to enhance your cheer. If you do this, it ups the value of your difficulty in the cheer because it's really hard to do stunts or tumbling or to jump while you are cheering. Optional use of props. Props include but are not restricted to palms, flags, megaphones, and signs. These may add extra value as another strength indicator should a team opt to use props. Full team performing cheer will be rewarded higher within the point range. In this category, the scores are how the words are being said, not the amount of words that are being said. The overall performance should not be confused with cheer. The overall performance should elicit a consistent, positive, and memorable experience throughout the entire routine. remember that if you are adding a pyramid sequence at the very end of your routine, the pyramid does not end when the flyers hit that last stunt. We watch all the way till the team brings that flyer down to the mat. So that's going to be counted as part of your pyramid execution score. Keep that in mind. The indicators are confidence. This should not occur just during your building sequences. Do team members know the routine? Do they know where they are going? Are they confident in their building, tumbling, and movements? Enthusiasm. This is not just during the cheer portion of the routine. Does the team sell it from the beginning to the end? Eye contact. Teams need to maintain eye contact when they think no one is watching, including those team members that may be kneeling down when a tumbling pass is going on. Obviously, bases and tumblers are unable to maintain eye contact for safety reasons when performing stunts and tumbling. Smile. This should remain consistent throughout the entire routine. Be aware that while this may wane while bases are concentrating on lifting and tumblers, everyone else should be absolutely smiling. And tumblers, obviously during their tumbling moves being upside down, we don't expect you to throw a smile our way, but as soon as you come up, you should re-engage with the judges. Dynamic performance, this is the wow factor that keeps the crowd engaged throughout every aspect of your routine, not just during the cheer or the dance. Do you close the same way that you started with the same level of energy? This routine will stick with the crowd because it is so memorable. Let's take a look at the building score sheet. Your routine is approximately 2 minutes and 45 seconds. That includes the downtime. The score sheets will have the following information. We'll be looking at the number of athletes on the team, and we will find that information on your required skill sheet that you will turn in. We have to check that at the beginning of your routine, counting the number of members on the team as you come onto the floor to double check, because something might have happened in warm-up and you have less team members than when you sent your skill sheet back to the judges. You will see the first and last name initials of the judges next to their number. You will see the majority at the top of the score sheet for stunts. We are going to record the 3 highest skills performed in majority or more than majority that you are getting actually judged on for the difficulty score. You will have a variety of skills within your routine, but we will be giving you the 3 highest skills performed. We're also going to be checking all of the indicators off at the bottom for the strengths that your team shows throughout the routine in the areas that you are being judged on a particular score sheet. What is important about this and different than last year is we're not going to be checking anything that is something that you may need to improve upon. So if you have a blank space, that is telling you one of 2 things. We either did not observe that, or that is something that you need to go back and reflect upon in your routine in order to get a check mark for a strength there. Comments as judges are going to be recorded as judges are able to throughout the routine. There may be time constraints depending on the size of the competition that you are in. If it's a smaller competition, you may find that the judge is able to write more comments. If it is a larger competition, you may find that there are less comments that are recorded on your score sheet. So we will do our very best to make sure that we are giving you feedback that you can then convey to your team. The indicators that are checked at the bottom are going to inform your execution, cheer, and overall score using the indicator guide, which is in the next slide. The indicator checkmark reference sheet is new this year, and it is for the sole purpose of helping the judges become more consistent and precise with their execution scores, and when scoring areas that only have indicators and are not split between difficulty and execution. We add up the number of strength indicators that we chose. We remember that this is based on strengths, and we have to check off all of the indicators that show the positive aspects of your team's performance. We then go to the indicator reference guide that have all strengths, and we look at the score accordingly. We are certain that we are making comments to support scores that we are giving. We want to look on the score sheet to see the number of indicators for that skill, cheer, overall performance. The number of indicators appears at the top of the column for the area of in parentheses, and this will direct us to put the number on the indicator reference sheet. We use the checkmark reference sheet to find our range. We determine the score based on the majority of the team, most of the team, or full team having those strengths. We do not have to have the same score as our scoring partner, which is very important for coaches to understand. We might not even be in the same range, but we need to be aware of each other's scores so that we are not miles apart. So we are going to attempt to stay within 2 full points of one another. This is different than last year. Coaches felt that they were simply receiving basically one score sheet, and they want their scores to reflect what the judge is actually seeing. So while we want consistency, we also want to be sure that we are using this reference guide and our own vantage point to inform our scores. Remember that judges are sitting next to each other, but they're seeing the routine through their own eyes. They may not be looking at exactly the same thing at exactly the same moment. So because of their vantage point and what they are observing, you may find that your execution or those areas of the score sheet that are both execution and difficulty together may be different from judge to judge. The majority grids should be very self-explanatory. They are really not much different than last year, but you're going to notice that on this particular sheet, you're going to have your multi-based stunts and your single-based stunts, and then your tumbling. So just be aware that that was for formatting purposes only, even though they're on different score sheets and being judged by different judges. Please take the time to go through these to make sure that you are hitting majority, or if you want to bump those scores up, remember that you have an opportunity to do that with those entry scores if you put up more than majority or full team stunts, and the fact that if they are being done without bases, you're going to bump your scores up even further before they are averaged. Remember that the pyramid's majority grid differs from the stunt majority grid. We are taking a look at the number of members that are involved in the pyramid. The only thing that we are actually going to require you to do the same as stunts is that you must have your dismounts in majority, the same majority that you would if you were doing them with stunts. Otherwise, please refer to this majority grid when you are choreographing your pyramids. It is our expectation that all teams will use the skill sheets to fill out the information regarding their routine. For building, we are asking that the coaches record the number of stunts and how many have front spots or bases. Please make sure that as you start to look through your routine, that you write down the start time of a skill. Remember, these are skills and not sequences, so every single skill that your team does, you are going to write it down. If you need additional room, you may have to go onto the back of your page. Just make sure that you write a note to that. Remember for pyramids that we are looking for the number of team members in the pyramid. So you're going to tell us the skill time, and you're going to tell us if there are front bases being used. You also need to record the time that your cheer starts and the time that your cheer ends. Remember, if you are close to 30 seconds, please make sure that you are adding probably a little bit more time to your cheer, that's so you don't run into any kind of issue with being less than 30 seconds, because you will get a 0. The downtime start and the downtime end, remember, we will not be judging that. We cannot impress upon you how important it is for you to be truthful with your skill sheet. We are only going to score what we observe as judges. If you are telling us that you are doing, for example, Baja fulls, those are 7.5, and you have 5 of them, and actually one of them is just a front non-twisting dismount, but you have it strategically placed in your choreography, so it's very difficult for us to actually see it. We are not going to give you credit for that because we can't see it, number one. and we see the 4, not the 5. So please be careful that you are being accurate. Once we continue to see a pattern emerging, that information does go back to the cheer committee rep, and you may be contacted about that. We had that happen a couple of times last year, that we are looking at the skill sheets and they're absolutely, obviously not what we're seeing on the floor. Now, there can be a couple of things that happen that we recognize as judges, and that is that something happens during warm-up. And so the routine that we're observing is not what's written down on the sheet. But it is really incumbent upon the coaches to make sure that they are being accurate and truthful with these skills, and that you have a good knowledge of where those skills are so you're not surprised by your scores. So please make sure that you have these up to date. If you need to, you can make these back into a Word document, or you can use Adobe to write right on the skill sheets. They need to be legible and neat when you hand them in, and make sure that you're constantly updating them as changes occur for your routine from week to week or competition to competition. Thank you so much for taking the time to go through this module. We think it'll be very helpful to you, and we're going to put a sheet up on the NYSPHSAA website for you to give back any feedback or comments or questions that you might have, as we will be planning to do a live webinar in the coming weeks that will address any of those questions. We know that there have been some changes this year, and it's caused you to rethink your entire routine and how you are approaching things. But we really feel like this scoring system, specifically on our building score sheet, will produce scores that are very fair to everyone, based upon your skill level, based upon whether or not you are challenging your team to do something, and making sure that you're getting the scores that reflect what your team is doing, and that if a team is seemingly doing the same skill but they're not doing it with as many groups, or they're doing it with front spots, that we have addressed that, and that you are getting credit for more risk, and that gives you more reward. So thank you, and very, very good luck in the 2017-2018 cheer seasons.